talk quite a bit about what he has experienced over time, both as a high schooler, as a college player, as a professional player, and then moving into management ranks. Those of you who are in my class, you know we talk quite a bit about collective bargaining, labor relations. We also talk about salary caps and how they were created, how they started. Quite frankly, when I think about it, it was Isiah, as one of the leaders of the union at that time, that laid the foundation for what we see today as the economics of professional sports. The salary caps, the revenue sharing systems, the guaranteed percentage of gross revenue. You know, I was talking to Norm Nixon, who was a player during Isiah's time. Of course, his wife, Debbie Allen, is an actress, a writer, etc. And I said, I know you guys are arguing and debating and fighting right now over wages, hours, and working conditions. One of the things that you should consider and think about, Debbie, is demanding a percentage of gross revenue. A percentage, a guaranteed percentage of gross revenue. We're going to talk some about that because that was one of our demands at the time. Back in 1980 and 83, that's how long ago it was. But that foundation is still existing today. And we owe that to Isiah and some of the players who played during that time to demand that from management. And it was a creative solution. It was a creative solution. And at the time, 53% was the floor and not the ceiling. Today, we talk in class about a hard salary cap, restraints that have been implemented in football, basketball. There were no such restraints at that time. So thank you for coming. We're going to talk quite a bit with Mr. Thomas. I think you'll be encouraged based on his story. He's a Catholic school educated young man, and we'll talk quite a bit about that. But before we start, I have a list that I think I have here. Yes. I just want you to think about this. He was drafted in 1981. He's a member of the 50th and also the 75th anniversary teams of the NBA. 12-time All-Star. He's an NBA Hall of Famer in 2005. 2 NBA championships. He's a graduate of Indiana.
Should have been 3.
Should have been 3. We're going to talk about that too. And the Michael Jordan years and the conflict that came with that time. But what I think, and I talked to him quite a bit over time about this, and we haven't seen each other for some time, but he went back to school and got his degree as an undergrad. And recently, he also finished his master's degree from Cal Berkeley. So with that, would you please give him a pirate welcome?
Thank you. Charlie, we're going to have this audience more often because I think that's some of the kindest things you've said to me. But it's always good to see you, and it's always good to be in your presence. And all of you are so fortunate and lucky to have him as a teacher, mentor, role model, because you were that for me for so many years and still is today. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. I didn't expect that, but thank you, Isiah.
Well, you know, we say nice things in front of other people.
Why don't you take us back to St. Joseph's High School and talk a little bit about your school in elementary through to high school?
So I'm originally from the west side of Chicago, and 6 brothers, 2 sisters, and I grew up born in '61, and on the west side of Chicago, lived through 4 riots, and moved 8 times before high school. We were a very poor family. In '63, I believe Kennedy's assassinated. '65, Malcolm X is assassinated. '66, '67, another one of the Kennedys assassinated. King assassinated '68, and Fred Hampton, who my mom worked for on the west side of Chicago, is assassinated in '70. And during that period of time, there were 4 riots, full-out, race riots on the west side of Chicago. And if some of you Google it, you will see Mayor Daley had a shoot-to-kill order on the west side of Chicago if we were out past 6 o'clock. The first time I had a weapon pulled on me was by the United States government. The National Guard rolled up. I lived on Congress and Holman. They came up off the Eisenhower Expressway. I lived 3340 West Congress. The tank pulled up off the expressway, and they pointed the barrel, coincidentally, right at our house. And, so those were very turbulent times. I went to Catholic school. I went to Our Lady of Sorrows at that time. And my mom was smart enough during that period of time, because we were so poor, but being smart enough to work for the church where we can go and get food and also, get a free tuition sometimes. But during that period of time, I remember that we had to go on welfare. And when you went on welfare, a man couldn't be in the house. And I remember the social worker or the welfare man would come by the house, and my father would have to go in the closet and hide or have to leave. And that just caused a lot of him losing his dignity. My mom and my dad ended up breaking up. And my mom, till the day she died, always said the United States government broke up her marriage. But went to Resurrection, graduated from Resurrection, then went to St. Joseph High School, all-boy Catholic high school. So I was in Catholic school my whole life until I got to Indiana University. I was an altar boy, got the free donuts, and got in trouble because my brother would always drink the wine. And he would drink a little bit more than he was supposed to get. And, the body of Christ, when you're hungry, you grab a couple extra pieces. So, but it was a good time, and we were, Jesuits, Catholic education, liberation theology at that time was being taught, and so if some of you want to really get into some deep philosophical thought, go and check out my man Thomas Aquinas and really listen to what he was talking about. There's there's a deep history of, you know, religion, faith, you know, understanding, spirituality that's actually being talked about in Awaken today. And all those things were being discussed really, truly in the 60s, in the early 70s. And then it got, you know, a lot of it got squashed. But I think spirituality, religion, faith, all those things are coming back in play and having really deep philosophical understandings of human, what it means to be human. And you know, we have all been taken out of all nationalities in our humanness, and we've been put in these boxes of black, white, blue, green, orange, people of color. Now, I'll leave you with this, and then I'll go on. But when I was coming up in the 60s, we were fighting not to be called colored. And I had Negro on my birth certificate that I had to go and get changed. Now, today, we are back to people of color. And I remember growing up with Irish, Greek, Italian, Polish, and they were very proud to be Irish, Greek, Italian, Polish. Now everybody's white, black, blue, green, or orange. I suggest we get back to living and claiming all nationalities and also raising out of these boxes to become human again.
So tell me, Isiah, that was a rough part of Chicago. How did you get from that neighborhood to school without some interaction with the worst part of Chicago?
Fortunately enough for myself, my mom was well known in the neighborhood.
Well, I understand that. I would like you to relay that one story with her coming out on the porch with a sawed-off shotgun to some degree. Right?
So, and forgive me, but I'm in a academic institution, so I can speak historically and factually without going into sports narratives. So my mom, during that period of time, as I said, she worked with Fred Hampton with the Black Panthers, and also when Martin Luther King moved to our neighborhood, he moved actually 4 blocks from us on the west side of Chicago. So my mom marched with Martin Luther King, and the United Center, which used to be the Chicago Stadium, literally was right across the street on Madison and Western from the Black Panther headquarters. And my mom would take us there for the free breakfast. So if you notice, everything is revolving around food, right? So we would go there, get the free breakfast, and we would also, take karate lessons and everything else, and, get books. So now, moving around the neighborhood, my mom was like, she was gangster, you know what I mean? She like, everybody respected her and everything else. And there's actually a street named after my mom on the west side of Chicago, Jackson and Holman, called Mary Thomas Way. They made a movie about my mom. So moving throughout the neighborhood, I can't tell you how many times, Charlie, because we didn't have no money, so you had to walk everywhere. But I can't tell you how many times I would be getting robbed or have a gun pointed to my head, and the dude would look at me and go, "You Miss Thomas' son?" And I go, "Yeah. I'm Miss Thomas' son." They're like, "All right, go ahead on." So my mom, because we was in the neighborhood like that, she got a pass. And when you talk about the vice lords, the disciples, the black souls, all of them really was living at our house. My mom would take the rent money sometimes and go bond them out of jail. Now, why was she doing that? Because all of you today, when you hear gangs, and if you read COINTELPRO, you'll see where J. Edgar Hoover, FBI, the government, they was the one who classified these community organizations as gangs, right? And drugs were not being sold in the neighborhood like they are today. Weapons weren't really in the neighborhood like they were today. The original vice lords, Black Panther Party and everything else that came about was really started to fight police brutality that was happening in the neighborhood. And so the gangs really protected you from the police. And then the police started, doing their thing with the gangs, and then somehow drugs came into our neighborhood. And the drugs came on the west side, they put the weapons on the south side. And it's still like that today. So that's kind of like the breakup of things that were happening. So I was able to move through the neighborhood because my mom was so strong and also had befriended and helped so many people.
So when did basketball come into your life? When did that happen?
Right, so when you hear about my childhood from age 1 through 10, right, and the narrative that they've sold all of you is that, Isiah wanted to be an NBA player, and, he grew up wanting to be a professional basketball player, and, you've been sold that. Well, how about this? The NBA wasn't even on television when I was growing up, right? There was no aspiration of being an NBA player, my first 10 years of life. Now, basketball came into play because, how many of you, do they still have CYO? Okay, so Catholic Youth Organization, CYO, they had basketball tournaments, and again, Brother Alexis, Sister Kevin Ann, if you played on a team, you got food. So my brothers and my sisters, all participated in sport, and afterwards, you got to eat. So basketball came into play through my older brother, Lord Henry, who was really, really good before he got turned out on heroin. He was the closest thing to George Gervin that I've seen, right? But every time he left the house, or my brothers left the house, since we didn't have babysitters or anything like that, they had to take me alone. So watching them play, being around the neighborhood, being around the court, that's how I learned how to play. But I learned how to play the game differently than the way it's being played today. I was always taught basketball is a thinking man's game, and you have to outthink your opponent and force him or her into making mistakes and doing things that they can't do or don't like to do. So you always take away that person's strengths. So understanding the game from that standpoint, I was always taught mental is to physical as 4 is to 1 when you're talking about basketball. And that's the way I was taught. It was a spiritual game. You play with emotion and feeling and passion, and you try to convey that, in your play.
So you get to high school and you're an outstanding player, and along comes Bobby Knight, who would like to recruit you to play at University of Indiana.
Yeah. So I myself personally did not want to play for Coach Knight and did not want to go to Indiana University. My mom was like, like y'all today, like y'all had a hat and everything, y'all say, I've made the decision that I'm going to Seton Hall. And you pick up the hat and you put it on your head and everybody claps, right? So at the press conference, my mom said, we sitting like this, she goes, my son has made his decision. he's going to Indiana University to play for Coach Knight. And I was like this. Now, why did she pick it? Her and my sister, one of my oldest sister, Ruby, Quinn Buckner, and and you know Quinn, so Quinn Buckner grew up in Illinois, and he was undefeated in high school, won state high school championship. Then he goes to Indiana, and he's undefeated at Indiana, wins a championship there. So when Coach Knight came to recruit me, he walks in the door with Quinn Buckner and Wayne Embry. Wayne Embry was the first black general manager in the NBA. Coach Knight walks in with those two. And in my mind, and in my brother's mind, we like, well, okay, Quinn's here, Wayne's here. I know we getting ready to get a lot of money. We getting ready to get paid now, right? And Coach Knight sat there and he said, he didn't even look at me, Charlie. He didn't even talk to me. He was talking to my mom. He said, Ms. Thomas, I'm going to promise your son 3 things. I'm going to promise you 3 things. A, I'm going to teach him everything about basketball that I know. B, he'll graduate from college. And C, he'll be a gentleman. And my brothers and I and everyone was like, well, because we had just had a bag dropped on us, like, okay, y'all got some money over here. Now we had no lights, we had no food in the refrigerator, we had roaches, and all our recruiting visits had to be in the daytime because at night we had no lights, right? So when Coach Knight said that, we were like, okay, well, this meeting's over. And my mother was like, I kind of like this guy. And so that's why I went to Indiana University, ended up winning the championship there, graduated from Indiana University, and...
But you left school and applied for the draft at 19, correct?
Yes. And remember, you had to prove hardship then. Yeah. Because Spencer Haywood was the first one to do it.
Yes.
And back then, like now, you can just leave school and go to college. Believe it or not, back then, you had to prove that you were poor enough.
Yeah, we had the hardship rule.
You had the hardship rule, so you had to prove that you were poor so you can go to the NBA. So we called it hardship, right? So we had to prove that we was hardship. I left school, got drafted by the Pistons, and when I left school, my mom didn't want me to leave school because my mom and my dad, they were from Mississippi, and we're from that generation, that second generation that came from Mississippi where really education was prioritized, right? Everything was about getting educated and being the first to graduate in the family and everything else. And so my mom, she wasn't happy about me leaving school. So literally, I had to sign a contract with my mom that every summer I would go back to school, double sessions at Indiana until I graduated. And at that time, they didn't have online courses, what they used to call it, correspondence courses. So I had to take correspondence courses while when I was playing for the Detroit Pistons. I was in school, and I had to go take correspondence courses at Groves High School in Michigan, and that's how I continued my degree.
Well, in 1980, the NBA was not so fantastic.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, it was perceived as being drug infested. Mm-hmm. It was perceived as being too black for Madison Avenue. Mm-hmm. TV ratings were poor. Franchise values were down. Mm-hmm. And we were looking for a solution. So you happened to come in at a time when basketball was not so great. Okay? Yeah. And if I recall during that time, you began as a player rep and sort of worked your way through the organizational side of the union to become a leader. What motivated you to do that?
My upbringing, and my upbringing, and then getting into this space. And I remember being back at school one summer, and Coach Knight called me into his office, and he had a really rough conversation with me because he said, you know, with all the gifts and knowledge that you have, you're doing a disservice to your race by not standing up and speaking up. No, who are you to tell me? You don't know nothing, man. And that hit me, you know. And getting involved in the union, I had two great mentors, in Dave Bing and Archie Clark in Detroit, who were letting me know how things worked. And then the political side of being a player rep, representing the 11 members on the team, speaking for them, articulating their voice, getting into the union, understanding, you know, kind of what we were facing. And that's, you know, that, I guess you would say, you know, it was the family business to kind of get into that role in terms of trying to make change.
Did that help you on the court?
Sometimes it helped me on the court, being looked at as a leader of men, not only being trusted by your teammates, but also being trusted by the opponent. You know, that, you know, this is what we're collectively fighting for, and being voted at that time as the player rep, and then vice president, then the president. You know, so it definitely helped, but with some it hurt, because as you know, a union is only as strong as its members, and there were some members who wanted to eat all the food and didn't want to share with the others. So when you're leading, you have to make sure that everybody eats, and sometimes the people who eat the most don't want to share with some who are not eating a lot.
So your initial reaction to sharing revenue was positive or not so positive?
Actually, it was negative. My first, and if you remember, we were one of the few teams in the beginning that voted against the salary cap, and then they had to go back and rework it. Bill Lambier and myself, we were looking at the owners at that time. What they needed is a way to show the banks that they could control expenses. And they had difficulty going to the banks, borrowing money, because there really was no way to show that, you know, this person making $50,000, how I know it's not going to be $75,000, you know, in a minute, right? So that was their mindset, the owner's mindset, in terms of putting in some type of structure that allowed them to basically go to the banks and borrow money. So the first salary cap that, you know, we as a Piston team said no to, it was kind of a hard cap, very similar to what they have now. But if you remember, we wanted exceptions. So you could always go over the cap, and there were ways to go over the cap.
I think that was the distinguishing factor here.
Yeah.
That the idea of the bird exception, which would allow you to exceed the cap. And today, of course, you can exceed the cap, but now you got to pay a tax.
You got to pay a tax, a double tax.
A double tax now.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the point I want you to clarify is that the players sort of understood the rationale for why the owners wanted to control labor costs.
Yes.
But at the same time, we did want and push for the second phase of that you can exceed the cap to pay your veteran free agent.
or your superstar players,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing that we collectively bargained for and with is that, okay, our job now collectively is to take this game out of the darkness and move it into the light, right? And the more we work together, and the more you get to know me, and the more we get to know each other, and the more we share stories, we can change the perception of the way this league is being perceived by the white audience and also by, Main Street and Wall Street.
Yeah.
Right?
The big challenge at that time was to change the perception
Yeah.
of professional basketball. If you recall, CBS was the carrier at the time.
Yes.
And they chose to go baseball.
Yeah.
And ultimately NBC came in. But the idea that we wanted to change the perception
Yeah.
of our league began
Yeah.
with a drug policy.
Yeah.
And now, what did you think of the policy initially? Because we had some players that were definitely using drugs, primarily cocaine, and we needed to rid ourselves of that perception. So the idea that we created a 1, 2, 3 strike, you're out
Yeah.
system, was that really acceptable to the players?
It was acceptable because, being one of the leaders at that time and having dealt with hardcore drug users in my family, I knew the cycle and understood the cycle of addiction, right? And the ups and downs and the heartaches and the heartbreaks and hopefully the breakthrough. And sometimes you may not get the breakthrough. General public wasn't understanding that, but I thought it was important for us to fight for that and give you a second chance or third chance. And then if you can't make it, right, now you got to really go get your life together.
If you remember, there was a moratorium
Yep.
that we gave the players a year for like 8 months to voluntarily come forward.
Yeah.
And if in fact you did that, the problem would be addressed and you'd still be paid your contract. So you think over time, though, the players sort of got used to that. After Michael Ray Richardson was one of the first to be banned from the league, you think the players sort of adjusted to that?
I think the players adjusted, but I think that the key thing was that they trusted us, right? So to be vulnerable and weak and to have all of your finances, at risk, there had to be some serious trust in us in terms of confidentiality and everything else. And we were able to give them that. But I also think it's important too, Charlie, that you address with your students, again, the times, in terms of race and media, so we're talking here, and some of you can Google it, right? Sports Illustrated, cover of Sports Illustrated. And you probably, some of you don't even know what Sports Illustrated is now, so my bad. But the cover of Sports Illustrated, this was the headlines. Will white America ever accept a black league or black players playing? Will advertisers ever pay for that? That was the talk during those times. So trying to clean up the league and then trying to give second chances, but also trying to rid yourself of some of the bad stuff, it was a delicate walk. And from a union perspective, I think we were able to do that and gain the trust of our members.
And then comes Magic Johnson and Larry Bird.
Yeah.
So when did that relationship with Magic begin?
My relationship with Magic began actually in like in 80, 81. And I was so fortunate because Magic had just won MVP, won the championship. And here I am, Mark Aguirre and I, we're friends with one of the biggest stars in the NBA. And not only are we friends with him, but he's opening up the door and, letting us come in and play with him and everything. So it was an unbelievable time for myself and for Mark. And then around, Magic was George Gervin, Dr. J, so the knowledge that we were getting during that period of time at a very young age, and they was very open and giving, working out, sharing. We come from a generation where, the game was meant to be told. Y'all been tricked, and they tell you the game is meant to be sold. So they done flipped the script on y'all. My job is to share knowledge with you, not charge you for the knowledge that I have, right? They only do that at the university level.
Okay, so championship teams, the experience of leadership on that first championship team, your relationship with Chuck Daly, who was the coach, I think, back then.
So we were fortunate during that period of time to have our owner in Bill Davison, general manager Jack McCloskey, and then Chuck Daly. Like those three were in sync, along with myself, and we were a pretty rebellious group. Like we didn't follow the norm.
The bad boys.
The bad boys. My man Dennis Rodman, stand up, talk to me. Let it be known, brother. But yeah, we were the bad boys, right? And why were we labeled the bad boys? Because everything that we did went against the grain of the NBA. Now, what do I mean by that? We were the first team to start our own jersey colors. So you'll see every team now has 3 jerseys, 3 colors, some have 4. We were the first team to experiment with that outside of the NBA. And it was called the Bad Boys, silver and black, and what they call cross-marketing now, we did that with the Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders and the Detroit Pistons came together, and I'm using these words now, but they weren't around then, collaborated on this marketing, and not only that, so we were the first team to start staying in 5-star hotels. We were the first team to get our own private plane and travel. And why was this so revolutionary? Because fortunately enough for myself, I got a chance to travel with the owner, Bill Davison, and saw how he lived and saw the hotels he stayed in. And I was like, our players should have this. This would help us win more games if we got better food, if we, stayed in better hotels, if we didn't have to take the first flight. Remember, you had to take the first flight leaving out. Now you play, we all have, the NBA is a night job. It's a night gig. And you're done playing, most nights, 10:30, 11 o'clock, you're getting out of the arena. But your body is still so amped up, right? It ain't like you, okay, 11 o'clock, oh man, I gotta take that. No, your body is still going. And so then you had to take a 6 a.m. flight. You had to take the first flight to the next city, commercial, right? And remember, you had to fight for the first class seats. Could only be 2 or 3 first class seats. And so now you got like everybody in coach and you got a 6 a.m. flight. You haven't slept, but now you got to play the next day. So, talking through the owners and the general manager at that time, Jack McCloskey, they were like, yeah, you're making sense. Let's see if we can do something about it. But here's the caveat. If we do this, how many more games you going to win? And so I said, well, if we do this, I think we can win 4 to 5 more road games. And if we win 4 to 5 more road games, that would give us home court advantage. That means you get 1 to 2 more playoff games. And if you get 1 to 2 more playoff games, and then we get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and you get to the finals, those extra games would actually pay for the plane, the hotel, and the extra expense that you just put out.
And the Pistons bought that.
Pistons bought that, we did it, and we won. And the relationship with Chuck Daly, it's strengthened because Chuck came to us from Cleveland after he had got fired in Cleveland. I think he had a record in Cleveland of 9 and 30 when he was fired. He came to the Pistons, and we started winning. Now, some people will say it was better coaching. We say, well, he started coaching better players. But Chuck was great because he saw us as young men, and then as we matured and got older, he was able to let go of the reins and treat us as adults as opposed to being younger people.
So when did this pass on to the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan?
Let me get a drink on this. And I don't mean Sherlock champagne. Now, you're going to have to ask me that question again.
Okay. I'm sure everyone has watched The Last Dance. And so we know that there was a rivalry between Jordan and you.
So how about this? I didn't know that I had a rivalry with Michael Jordan. At that time, my rival was Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. That's who I was chasing. And Larry Bird, I mean, we nicknamed his jump shot Silent Death. And you remember how cold Bird was at that time, right? And Magic had Kareem. Now, Kareem arguably is the greatest player to ever play the game and scored the most points, but there's no argument who's had the greatest basketball career of all time. That is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Grade school, high school, college, NBA, nobody has dominated like he did. Well, Magic had him on his team.
Yeah.
Right? So Magic, Kareem, and then he gets James Worthy. He's loaded. Bird's got McHale, Parrish, DJ, Now, Magic 6'9", Bird is 6'9". I'm trying to win against them. So when I see the 6'6" guy, I'm like, I can do you, right? So Jordan and I, truth be told, like my family on the west side of Chicago, our families were close. His brother, my sister, would come to the games together. My nephew actually lived with Michael Jordan for like 5-6 years. And I never knew Michael Jordan felt the way about me until The Last Dance, till I saw it on television. Now, if you look at The Last Dance, you see me dressed in a 3-piece suit, and we're doing an interview at NBA TV. He and his producers called me and said, we need you to do the story with Jordan or sit down for The Last Dance. And I'm like, sure, because in my mind, I'm thinking ain't no problem, ain't nothing going on. Now, everybody is saying, oh, Isaiah, you had to know something was going on. I didn't. I wasn't thinking that way. I thought we competed. But again, my focus was, how do I beat Magic and Kareem, and how do I beat Bird, Parrish, McHale, and all them, right? So I sit there and I do the interview, and, you know, we had the whole NBA TV crew there watching, right? Kevin Cottrell from Chicago, he was actually in the room, taping, filming it. You know, my boss, Ben, you know, everybody was like, yeah, cool. Then The Last Dance is coming out, so we're all sitting at home because everybody's locked up. We're all sitting at home, and he comes on television and says, I hate you. And I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? Now, all these years he had denied that, you know, he wasn't the one that kept me off the dream team and everything else. You know, I believed him at his word. You've never heard me say anything negative about Michael Jordan. I've been factual and accurate, which some of you take as negativity. But you've never heard me, like, you know, be negative towards him. Now, Last Dance comes out, and now everybody's calling me. What you got to say about Jordan said he hates you, Jordan said he didn't like you, Jordan is, Jordan. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, time out. I didn't know he felt that way, but now that I know that he feels that way, it's on. You know, it's like, you can't say you hate me, and I'm supposed to be cool with that. And now everywhere I go, even sitting here today, you ask me about it, right? That wasn't the case back then. Now, did we compete? Now, when I say I beat Magic, Bird, and Jordan, people get mad and say, oh, why you say that? Well, it's true. And by the way, my team beat their team more than they beat me. Those are facts. I'm not bragging. Like Muhammad Ali say, that's the facts. And you say, well, they swept you. Yeah, they did. But the total number was 12-10 in terms of playoff head-to-head. Now think about this. Before they swept us, how many of you in here are good with math? They won 4 straight, right? So that made it 12-10. So before they swept us, what was the number? 12-6. So that wasn't my competition. And if I don't break my wrist that is fused today, I don't know if they beat us. Now Magic say if he don't pull his hamstring, he don't know if we beat them. And then I go back and I say, well, if I don't sprain my ankle, I don't know if y'all win it. You know, so injuries are part of the game. No excuses. But at the end, when we tally it up, my team beat the Celtics, the Lakers, and the Bulls in head-to-head playoff competition more than they beat me. Those are the facts. That's not hate. That's just the truth.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, 94, the career comes to an end. And now we're flipping the switch. Mm-hmm. All the things that you acquired, your experience, your leadership, your knowledge of the game is now challenged from the other side. And now the business of the game becomes a priority. Analytics, things of that nature come into play. Mm-hmm. And your first challenge was with the Canadian team.
Yeah. So I retired in 94. And in 92, I was the first NBA player to be on the cover of Forbes magazine. I bought a company by the name of American Speedy Printing. We had 700 quick print chains across the United States, and I was on the cover of Forbes magazine holding, a laptop. And I retired in '94, and that's when the NBA was deciding to expand their global footprint. I was president of the Players Association. Charlie was still executive director of the Players Association, which we really do have to get into. I retired in '94. Charlie is let go in '95, and they lock the players out in '95. The leadership is removed, and we was getting 53% of the gross, and now the NBA starts clawing it back. So I just want to point that out about '94 and '95. So the NBA decides to expand its global footprint, and they want teams outside of the U.S. borders. The first two teams that they expanded to the U.S. borders were Toronto and Memphis. I am the co-founder of the Toronto Raptors. Myself, John Batove, and a gentleman by the name of Alan Slate, the Bank of Nova Scotia. Those were the four owners of the Toronto Raptors. Owner, president, GM on the basketball operations side, and everything that you see of the Toronto Raptors is the foundation that we laid, from the mascot to the colors. Purple was my favorite color. And then you got the silver and black that's also weaved into there. The dance pack, our dance team, everything from chefs. We were the first team to have chefs, massage therapists, all the things that you see happening today in the NBA. The first circular locker room was my idea that we put in Toronto. Now you have NBA teams and NFL teams now have circular locker rooms. Why did I want a circular locker room? Who plays basketball or sports in here? My man, in the huddle, what do? We get in a what? A circle, right? So communication, language, the way it's transmitted, the way you absorb it, the way you receive it, we get it in what? In the huddle and in the circle. So therefore, I wanted the locker room to be shaped in a circle instead of a square, right? I'm proud to say that there's only one team now that exists outside of the U.S. boundaries. That is the Toronto Raptors. The Vancouver Grizzlies did not succeed. They failed, and now they're in Memphis. So I take great pride, and we just did our 35th anniversary back in Toronto last month. We call it our OG anniversary because we were the originals. And we did good work there, and it still exists today.
And your experience at the New York Knicks?
My experience at the New York Knicks on the basketball side, if anyone outside of the media would go back and truly critique the trades and the drafts that we made and the things that we did, being the president, the general manager, and the coach, I don't think that's ever been done in Knicks history. But when you look at the players that we had on that basketball team, Jamal Crawford, they probably named the Sixth Man of the Year award after him. Trevor Ariza, my first draft pick, I think he won 2 or 3 championships. Channing Frye won a championship. David Lee won a championship. And believe it or not, Eddie Curry was on a championship team with the Miami Heat. Now, I get criticized a lot for the Eddie Curry trade. Let me be factual about that trade instead of what y'all read by some of my haters in the media. This was the trade. We traded the second pick in the draft, and his name was Tyrus Thomas. How many of you have heard of Tyrus Thomas? How long did he play in the NBA? Thank you. We traded Tyrus Thomas, the second pick in the draft, for Eddie Curry and a gentleman by the name of Wilson Chandler. Yeah, he was on our team, right? Yeah, so we had Wilson Chandler, Eddie Curry, Matt Barnes. We had a squad. We had a crew here. And we rebuilt it in maybe 12, 16 months. Now, when I got here, y'all remember the team that I inherited and the salary cap that I inherited. Now, they got all you thinking that, oh, Isiah killed the Knicks, for 20 years. I was only here 3.5 years. But every mistake that been made, somehow your generation said, oh, Isiah messed up the Knicks. I said, no. Go back and look at the players that I had and what we were doing. Now, when you look at the way our salaries were, I made a trade. Go back and look at the Phoenix trade that I made. When I got here, I believe you can only have 15 players. When I first took the job, I think it was December 23rd, right before Christmas, halfway during the season. The Knicks had like 17 players on the roster. You only allow 15. Yeah, 17 players. So I had to start making moves right away. One of the best trades I made, I still say today, when you look at Penny Hardaway and Stephon Marbury, we sent 5 players to Phoenix. And those 5 players' salaries totaled $30 million. Penny Hardaway was making 15, Marbury was making 15. I needed roster room. I couldn't have 16 players. So I had to trade 5 for 2. Marbury comes here, we make the playoffs. Now, a lot of you don't like Marbury, and you've been sold a bill of goods. But let me tell you about, Steph as a basketball player, right? No, real talk, as a basketball player. Stephon Marbury should be in the Hall of Fame. What Stephon Marbury has done outside of the United States. I'm going to say this again. What he's done outside of the United States. They have a statue of him in China. Y'all don't hear me. Now, Yao Ming is in the Hall of Fame because of what he did outside of China. And Yao Ming is in the Hall of Fame for what he did outside of China in the United States. Your own New Yorker, sometimes New Jersey, y'all don't love him, and I don't know why. The other person y'all don't love, and y'all don't give no credit to, that dude Nate Tiny Archibald. What? Y'all just did a whole documentary on great New York point guards, and guess who wasn't in the show? My man in the back. Who wasn't in the video? They didn't have Tiny in the video. Nate Tiny Archibald, top 50, top 75, he don't make it. So your generation, just always do some fact checking. Always do some fact checking. Don't believe everything that you read, see, or hear. You have to go beyond. You have to go beyond that next step, that 2-step. Who actually wrote this? Who is he? Who is she who wrote this? What do they think? Where are they from? Your critical thinking needs to be turned on, not just accepting what somebody wrote or what somebody said.
So,
Any questions on the Knicks? I take them all.
well, speaking of the Knicks and Toronto, and your Hall of Fame performance as a player, now you're advising Phoenix. And how do you build a championship team?
I've won every place that I've been. Now, some people dispute that. I don't know how, but some people say you didn't win. And I'm like, well, I think I did, but, how do you win? And it really comes down to people, right? How do you balance and blend people? And how do you give them their personhood? And how do you inspire? How do you inspire and motivate, not manipulate? Can I motivate you? There used to be a time when you're talking about, winning, right? Teachers and professors, mentors, they used to come into a classroom and they would point at that kid that just wasn't doing that well. And they would say, let me have that one. That's the one I want. Because I see something in that one that you don't see, right? So how do you pull that out of that individual's chest? And how do you see beyond the numbers? How do you see beyond analytics? Because if I believed in analytics and numbers, I wouldn't be sitting here. I am what you call the outlier. They don't count me. I'm that dude when you're putting together the analytics and the statistics, and this one you don't understand, they go, oh, we're just going to leave that one over here, right? And we're not going to even count that. We're going to pay attention to all the others. Well, what I look for in players, I look for that outlier, and I try to get as many of them as I can. Now, when I say outlier, I'm talking about talent and skill. I'm not talking about bad people. Big difference. When I was growing up, if you had a bad attitude, you got kicked off the team. No matter what your numbers were. Nowadays, you can have a bad attitude and they say, well, analytics say, he got 12, he's going to give me 20 points and 12 rebounds. Yeah, but that dude is destroying your whole locker room. That person couldn't be on a team back in the day. And I think what Deion Sanders is doing in Colorado is he's bringing back old school, hear me when I say this, he's bringing back old school truth. Hey, you're not good enough. He'd say that. You're not good enough. You got to get better. Not, well, let me tell it to you another way. No. If you want an A on the test, you got to study a little bit more. You can't go to the club, you can't party and everything else, and then think you're going to come to class and get an A. The people who study, the people who make the sacrifices, they get the A. They work hard for it. Then there's some C guys who like, well, I don't want to study in the library that hard. Well, you're going to get a C. But that's what I look for. I look for them guys who work and want the A, but they just may not be in the right place. There's a coach, there's a team, and there's a teacher for everybody. And if you find that right player and you put him with that right coach, hey, magic can happen. Just like if you find that right coach, Chuck Daly, 9-35 in Cleveland, and you put Chuck Daly with the right players, oh, Chuck Daly a Hall of Fame coach now. So it's about blending personalities, skills, and talents. And if you do all that, then you can evaluate the numbers that they produce. But if you're asking those numbers to tell you who that person is going to be, that outlier is going to be, that come down to, unfortunately, that come down to a little experience, what they call wisdom. So that gray beard and that gray hair you got, it comes down to that.
Good. You brought up Deion Sanders.
Yes.
Okay. And today we look at the Power Five conferences.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the realignment of college sports. We look at the television revenue of college sports. And we look at the coaches' salaries in college sports. Mm-hmm. So as a business now, can we really differentiate what we see on Saturday, maybe a little different product, but as a business, is that any different than what we see on Sunday in the NFL?
It is absolutely no different, with the exception that the players are not being compensated for their labor. And all of you, in business school, what Charlie and I and what we've always studied and what I've always studied are business models. What's the business model? What are the rules, of the game? And when you look at sports and entertainment, unfortunately, the business model is still a plantation business model. You don't want to say that, you don't want to call it that, but that is the business model. Even the language that we use, right? I get drafted. I'm under contract. I'm restricted. I can become free. I can be a free agent. I can get bought out. That language is not used in any other business environment, with the exception of sports and entertainment. So critiquing and studying the business model is what I do and what I've done my whole career, which, creates some controversy. Now, when you look at these realignments and conferences, what is it all about? It is about money. As Deion Sanders said, it's about the money. Let's stop pretending. It's about the money. Now, we got schools from the West Coast joining the ACC in the Big Ten, Midwest and East Coast Conference. And now these student athletes are going to travel across the country and play back-to-back games on the East Coast, and somebody going to tell me, they're students first. I wrote a paper, my thesis, and I'll give it to you before we leave. I think I sent it to you before. But it's called Books and Basketball. And it's in the library at UC Berkeley. But Books and Basketball, and I'll give it to you. You can give your students. And I encourage all of you to read it, but ask questions about my question, going back and critiquing my career and my life, the question that I asked myself was, why so many of my teammates, members in all union, never graduated college? And I was curious about that. And the more I critiqued it, and the more I studied it, and the more I looked at the education system, and the more I looked at the discourse of the universities, and the setup of the universities, and how they were aligned, it it's an interesting read. But, people need to quit playing, and, it's all about the money. And that's what's driving these decisions. Where can I make the most money in sports and entertainment, and how can I continue to get free labor and not pay for it to feather our pockets?
Amen. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurship. Because one thing that I've admired about you over these last 20, 25 years is that you've used basketball to advance your business knowledge. And Isiah International means what?
Isiah International is a family-owned business where I try to basically take all the resources that I've earned and put back into my immediate family. And I do business most of my business is done outside of the United States. And the reason why is because I get to be and participate as a full American with equal rights, I don't have to classify as a minority. I don't have to classify as black. You don't get to classify as white. What's your national? You Irish? No, yeah. American. I'm American too. But your mom, dad?
My mom, dad are both. My dad's Scottish.
Irish?
Irish.
Yeah, see, we brothers. You go farther back in Ireland, there's some skin color here. So here in America, we base everything on skin color. Basically, when you go and doing business in other places, it's about if I like you or don't like you, or if it's about your religious beliefs or your faith, or what. That's what you discriminate on internationally. But in terms of why I'm outside of the United States, I do business in Latin America. One of my companies, One World Products, we work with Stellantis, and also we just signed this company called Smokies, those who are in the cannabis space. So in Colombia, in Latin America, Brazil, getting ready to move into Peru, and then I have a champagne company, Sherlon Champagne, where we cultivate and grow in the old region of Champagne, which is the oldest region of Champagne. I was on a phone call this morning discussing pricing. And so you're dealing with interpreters and everything else in that space. So starting from Canada to Colombia to Europe, and now here in the U.S. Here in the U.S., when I do business in the U.S., unfortunately, I do have to classify as a minority, and I classify as black. So I don't get, the full benefits of being a full adult person. So, do we have any, who are the professors in here? Can you Google minority, definition of a minority real quick? Because when you're a minority and read that definition, because that's what your business is, and your company, look where they treat your company. And you can step to the mic when you find it.
Professor DeLuca.
What's a minority?
Good morning, and thank you. Minority, the smaller number or part, especially a number that's less than half. 2, the state or period of being under the age of full legal responsibility. What more do you want?
That's good enough.
Be a minority of, in the minority, belonging to or constituting the smaller group.
So, I'm a grown man. I don't need, supervision. My company is full grown. I'm not a minority. My company in America, United States, it's classified as a minority-owned business. When I'm outside of America, I get to do business as an American. And so that's the difference between international and in the United States, business-wise. And it's important that all of you who are business students understand the difference, because once you go outside of these borders, international law, international business is different than it is in the U.S. And, again, the quicker we can get away from skin color and back to all of us treating each other as human beings, the better off we'll be.
Good. Speaking of cannabis, the most recent collective bargaining agreement that was signed by the NBA and NBA players will not test for marijuana.
I think that's great, and here's why. In the 1990s, the endocannabinoid system was discovered. Now, one of you smart people, you can Google the endocannabinoid system. What is the endocannabinoid system? You have CB1, CB2 receptors inside your body. Your endocannabinoid system actually regulates your sleep, regulates pain, regulates your appetite, so forth and so on. Well, the hemp and the cannabis plant are the two plants that Mother Nature put here to work directly with your endocannabinoid system. Now, for professional athletes, the three biggest things that you fight: pain, inflammation, and sleep. Guess what the plant helps you with? So the NBA, in my opinion, is, again, further along and far ahead of most of the other leagues in terms of this space. Because not testing for it and now trying to understand the benefits and how to use it, I think makes more sense than criminalizing it and punishing it.
Yeah, we've been behind. I mean, even the late David Stern realized later that perhaps Charlie, they're into something here, that it helps relieve pain. It does other things that you point out. So the idea, though, that the NBA is not testing for marijuana is the same as the NHL. They don't either. So are we about to see a change, a drastic change in the way we look at marijuana?
Absolutely. And
Well, by the way, Stephen A. Smith, you must stay off the weed.
yeah. Forgive me when I say this, but tell some of the cancer patients that, Stephen A. So, are we getting ready to see a change? Absolutely. The medical industry is already making the shift from opioids to prescribing the plant. Now, why is that happening? Science is driving it, and Mother Nature has said in her most powerful way to all human beings on earth, if you don't change your ways, I am going to kill you. I'm going to say that again. Mother Nature has said in her most powerful voice, she has said, not he, she has said to all human beings, if you don't change your ways, I am going to kill you. Now, the medical industry has now, and I'm sure they're teaching now, about the endocannabinoid system and how to treat human beings, as opposed to prescribing you synthetic opioids. They're now giving you a card where you can stand in line for your depression, for your anxiety, for whatever it may be, and they're saying this plant will help you. So there's a shift going on across the globe. Now, some people look at it and they say, well, I get to abuse it, I get to No, that ain't what she's saying. She's saying that I put this here to help you. Learn about your body. The Egyptians said, the number one rule the Egyptians said, first rule of law, know thyself. And when you know yourself and you know how your body works, you'll stop looking outside of your body to fix your body. And that's what professional athletes in sports now are doing. And that's why the NBA is saying, you know, these guys are on to something, and there's a fine line between using and abusing, but if this is helping reduce pain and swelling and helping all guys sleep, then guess what? We get better performers.
Mm-hmm. One final subject, gambling.
Gambling. Yeah.
Now, we realize that the source of revenue here is always a question, and they're looking to expand that. But the impact, and I've always said that the impact is going to be felt more at the college level because they don't compensate these student athletes than at the professional level. But we are already finding that the NFL has disciplined at least a dozen players up to this point. So where do we go with gambling?
I do believe it's here to stay. And like anything else, at its infancy and at the start, there are going to be some casualties. There are going to be some mistakes. And I believe that every year it'll get fine-tuned a little bit more, and a little bit more, and knowledge will be passed on, and people will communicate and people will talk, and the consequences for abusing or not, doing what you're supposed to do, then there'll be a penalty and a price to pay. And once that message is circulated and articulated, and some people, fail, it'll get better. But I look at it and I say, those small few that you just named, think about all the athletes who are participating who are not doing it. So the majority is doing the right thing. And there's a small few that, it's getting slapped on the hand or slapped on the wrist right now. That will get better, I believe.
Okay, good. Well, we have got about 10 minutes left. Would like to open up to some questions for the students here. If you'd like, you can line up here behind this microphone.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
My question is, what does it take to become a general manager in the NBA? Because I think that's something I would want to do when I grow up. So,
What does it take to become a general manager in the NBA? There's 30 teams right now, so there's only 30 jobs, right? And for you to become a general manager in the NBA, you got to learn the sport. You got to understand the salary cap, the numbers, and you got to be able to evaluate talent. If you can do those three things, and you can do them extremely well, Then you send your resume to those 30 teams. You knock on their door. They're going to tell you no. You're going to knock again. They're going to tell you no. You're going to show up. They're going to tell you no. And you're going to keep showing up until somebody gives you a chance. And when they give you a chance, you're only going to get one shot.
10%.
Like Eminem said, you're going to get one shot. And then when you knock it out of the park, now you're GM. But you're going to have to knock on some doors, and you're going to get told no a lot. I'm in business, and I get told no maybe 50 times a day, but I get that one yes. And I get that one yes, they say, hey, you successful. But I've been told no 50 times. So put your hard hat on, knock on the door, study, learn the craft.
Thank you.
Hi, how you doing today?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. My name is Gerald Wesley. I'm a senior here, and I just wanted to ask, like, have you ever been discriminated outside of the U.S. while doing business just for being an American?
That is a great question. Have I been discriminated outside of the U.S. just for being an American? That I don't know. But I will tell you this. Doing business outside of the United States, the reception that I've gotten across the globe as an American has been positive. I've been treated really exceptionally well outside. So I haven't faced discrimination as an American that I know of. That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Thomas. I'm Christian. I'm a sophomore here at Seton Hall. And I was going to ask you, following your retirement from the NBA, what was key to achieving, I guess, financial stability, longevity, without, I guess, a periodic NBA salary? So you mentioned that you had businesses following your retirement from the NBA. So I guess you're in the unique circumstance where a player transformed into a brand. So can you talk to me about that, please?
So to answer your first question, I still don't have financial stability, right? I don't know what that looks like because I'm still hustling, and I got a family that's in Chicago. We were below the poverty line, hanging by a string, right? So I still got nieces, nephews that I'm trying to uplift. What was the second part of that question?
I said, just, following your retirement, you kind of, I guess you could say you're one of the players that transformed into a brand, right? To have foundational work, philanthropy, stuff like that. Can you talk to me about that?
So I never knew that Isiah would become a brand. I wasn't thinking that way or looking at it that way. But now that I am, there are certain values that I bring to the table that represent me and also the Isiah brand. So given that some thought, everything revolves around my personhood, what I stand for, and who I am, and I try to put that into my business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How you doing today, Zeke?
I'm good.
My question is a fun question. In a 7-game series, who's going to win, 04 Pistons or Bad Boy Pistons?
Oh, in a 7-game series, who wins that? 04 or 07? 04 or
03-04, when they
03,
won the championship.
You know what?
How many games is it going to?
It's going to go 7 games, and it's going to come down to the last shot, and we're not going to take the last shot. We both just going to walk off in a tie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. I'm Joshua, and my question is, why do you think modern-day super teams in sports tend to fail, and could it be that the blending of good personalities based off money cause a negative shift in team structure and chemistry?
So modern-day super teams have not failed, but chemistry, money, and all that does come into play. So history lesson, super teams always existed. They just told y'all generation, for whatever reason, that they don't. And that's some BS, right? The Los Angeles Lakers was a super team. Magic, Kareem, Worthy, Byron Scott, Michael Cooper. The Boston Celtics was a super team. Larry Bird, Parrish, McHale, Ainge. All these teams had like 6, 7 Hall of Famers on their team. The Edmonton Oilers, with Gretzky and all them. The Yankees, right? You look at the Giants team that won the Super Bowl. Everybody who wins, you get the best players, you get the best coaches, you get the best people. That's what gives you the best team. Now, what they've tricked all of you with is, you got to do it by yourself. Why you need somebody else to help you? Because it's a team. It's a team. So my advice to you in business, find the smartest people, the best people, and see if you can work with them and see if you can hire them. And if you get those people, you're going to win. But if you try to do it by yourself, you got no shot.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Isiah Thomas. My name is Christopher Manzano, and I have a question. So I'm part of a club called Hall Street Fund, and we make presentations to invest our endowment fund for many companies in the industry. According to our morals, we can't invest in companies that relate to like beer or cannabis. But in terms of our morals, we do invest in companies that take advantage of like labor laws in other countries of, children who help in the production, companies such as Tesla. So I have a question. Do you think that it would be beneficial for our club to open up to investing in cannabis companies or dispensaries of the sort?
As chairman, CEO of a publicly traded company on the OTC right now, I can't give that advice because of the position that I hold. But I would suggest that you expand your boundaries.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Mrs. Thomas. I'm Warren. I had a question. So you expanded to Toronto in the late 90s. I wanted to ask if there was maybe room to expand to have a team in Mexico someday in the future, do you think?
I do believe there's an opportunity to have a team in Mexico, and I think the NBA has been flirting with it for quite some time. They've played exhibition games there. Every year, I think, there's an exhibition game in Mexico. So I do believe that, there will be an opportunity there. And I think we already have 2 teams in Mexico called the Clippers and the Lakers.
All right, thank you.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Thomas? My name's Ryan. What's your favorite memory from your NBA career?
My favorite memory from my NBA career is absolutely winning back-to-back championships, celebrating, in the locker room, with my teammates. By far, those are my 2 favorite memories.
You deserve to be in the dream team.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Good afternoon. My name is Aiden. Obviously, when you were with the Knicks, you worked for and with James Dolan, who a lot of people blame the organizational structure on the last 25 years. So do you think those issues stem from the top down?
That's a great question, and I'm happy to answer it because my experiences, and I'm still on the board of MSG with James Dolan, and he just built the Sphere in Las Vegas, which I think is going to revolutionize and change the whole entertainment concert viewing space. My experiences with him has been positive. Now, on the business side, you look at what Cablevision was, sold it. You look at the Knicks, the Rangers, Madison Square Garden. Unfortunately, the Knicks haven't won a championship, and he's hired, people, who are in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I'm in the Hall of Fame. Larry Brown's in the Hall of Fame. Lenny Wilkins in the Hall of Fame. Don Chaney's in the Hall of Fame. Phil Jackson's in the Hall of Fame. We just didn't get it done. Now, he gets blamed for it, but I said we didn't get it done, right? So he gives you all the resources that you need. Now, do you blame him for the Rangers?
I don't really watch hockey, honestly.
But the Rangers, they're pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Everybody kind of likes the Rangers. Well, he owns them too, right? Do you blame him for the Rockettes? I'm just saying, like, we kind of pick and choose, and, you know, he's not betting 10 out of 10, but business-wise, when you look at what he's done business-wise, you know, he and his family, they're good 8 out of 10.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How's it going, Mr. Thomas? Good afternoon. My name is Mark Patani. I'm a rising senior. I'm a senior now. Sorry, used to the summer trend. But my question was regarding financial literacy. So with the rise of new NIL valuations and college athletes making money earlier in their careers, financial literacy has become much more important. Would you be able to describe your process into like becoming financially literate early on in your career?
I was pretty simple in terms of the way I handled money, and I looked at it very similar to the way my mom and dad did it, right? You know, you learn how to budget at a very young age when you're poor. Now, they don't call it a budget, but when somebody give you $1, you know, I got 50 cents on the bus, I got 25 cents to spend, I'm gonna save this extra quarter just in case. You're budgeting, right? So you learn how to do those things at a very early age. But as you grow up, the dictionary changes. You know, they assign different meanings to the word, where you have to learn another word, which kind of, you know, makes you like, oh man, you know, we're collaborating, or are we getting together? Right? You know, so budgeting, right? You know, expenses, revenues, you've been doing that all your life. Now they tell you to put it in a column, and the column, like, you know, gets you like, oh man. But it's still the same thing, adding and subtracting. So when did I learn to do that? I learned to do it probably when I was 8, 9 years old, when I got my first quarter.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? I'm Aiden Benison. I'm a sophomore here. If you could replace yourself with one person on the dream team, who would it be?
If I could replace myself?
If you could replace someone on the dream team with yourself, who would it be?
You know, I probably wouldn't replace anyone, and the reason why I wouldn't replace anyone is because if I said, yeah, I'm gonna get on the team and this guy's gonna get off, then I would be devaluing that same person who probably voted for me to be the president of his union.
Okay.
So I don't, you know, sometimes things are out of your control, and sometimes you do lose, right? And, you know, you take the L and you get better. You go do your thing.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't try to replace somebody.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Thomas, thank you very much for your time today. My name is John LaFrance. I just graduated from Seton Hall in May, and so I'm pursuing a career in basketball operations. And currently in that period you were talking about of knocking on doors and hearing no and just keep getting at it. And so my work experience has mostly been in scouting and video, and there's so many ways to sort of get in these days. But is there one specific skill or, you know, area of the business that you look for in young people to have sort of an edge on the competition?
For me, it's, you know, this is a business about, to boil it down to two things, it's about talent acquisition and talent evaluation. And if you can evaluate talent, you got an edge. Those who can't evaluate talent, they fail. And those who don't have the skills to go and acquire talent, they fail. So 2 things in this business, acquisition and evaluation. And if you can evaluate and then you can go and acquire, you got a shot.
All right, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. My name is Carlos Buelvas. I am a senior here at Seton Hall, and so my question is basically about how earlier you had mentioned that you had a great interest and you wrote for in UCLA, I believe, about the percentage of players in the NBA and the National Basketball Player Association that had not gone to college or not completed college, and you took a great interest in that. I wanted to ask you about your opinion on players like LeBron and Kobe when they came out of high school and didn't go to college at all, what your thoughts on that situation may have been, and on top of that, what can we do as a society to promote players of any sport to attend like 4 years of college and complete a degree in some form?
Well, first of all, when LeBron and Kobe came out, I was very interested in trying to get them on my team because they, talent, right? Their talent does not necessarily have to equate with their educational ability, right? So you going to school to get out to make money. That's what this degree is going to give you. It's going to give you an opportunity to be credible. I graduated from Seton Hall, here's my letter. So now I will believe in you and give you money because I think there's a certain amount of talent that you have. Well, they were able to display that out on the floor. So they don't need school necessarily to get paid. Now, what they need education in school for is what they're getting ready to get and inherit, and also for their self-growth. That's why you need the education. So a lot of them are going back to school and still pursuing their education. I did both because I understood the importance.
Thank you for your time.
How you doing, Mr. Thomas? My name is Jorge Mercado. I'm a senior here at Seton Hall. My question is, what are the keys to a successful pro career and a successful career after playing?
Keys to a successful pro career is, A, you got to be good enough to be one of the 450 players. B, you got to stay healthy, right? And C, don't ruin your life outside of the 4 lines. If you can do those 3 things, then you got a chance of having longevity. 95% of the players in the NBA ruin their lives outside of the 4 lines. And that's where education, responsibility, understanding, those where those things come into play. But those will be the 3 things.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Thomas. My name is Emil. I'm a junior. I just wanted to know, who are your favorite players in today's league, and where would you rank yourself in comparison to players today?
My favorite players in today's league: Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Devin Booker, Curry, Kyrie. Them the kind of guys that I like to watch. And where would I rank myself? I think I do all right. I think I would do.
You think
all right.
all-star level?
Say that again?
All-star level. All-star.
Who's the all-star?
In today's NBA, you think?
Would I be an all-star?
Yeah. Not your age right now, but I'm saying, back in your prime. If you're playing now, yeah.
At what level would you be playing?
Dude. I would be a champion.
Okay.
If I am, how about this? The greatest players of all time, your top 10, 4 of them I beat. Those are the facts. Now, I'm not in that top 10, but the 4 guys who are, my head-to-head playoff record against those 4 guys is better. So I think I would do all right here.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Thomas. My name is Braxton Abella. I'm a senior here. I was just wondering about your work in player relations and your union work. There's a war going on in Russia and Ukraine, obviously, and some of professional sports have, I guess, discriminated against Russian players who don't have any real impact on what's going on with their government and the decisions that their government makes. I'm just wondering, how would you handle that as a union rep? Because at the end of the day, Russian players are just as part of a union as Americans and Canadians and everybody else. So
I would take the position, if I was in a leadership role, I would take the position that sports brings people together, and the more we communicate and get to know each other and be in the same environment, sports allows us to do it. And I would take the position, and hopefully Ukraine and Russian players who participate in sport could be shining examples for those two countries.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. My name is Juan Daniel. I'm a junior here at Seton Hall, and my question is, what's your hypothesis as to why you didn't make the dream team?
My hypothesis, well, it's not a hypothesis anymore. It was confirmed. You know, dude on the last day and said he didn't want me to be on the team. That's what he said, and I guess that's how it went. So.
It's tough. Thank you.
But you know, tough and bad things happen. Remember that. I mean, life ain't a smooth ride. You're going to have some failures. There are going to be some people who don't like you, and you have no reason why you don't know why they don't like you. And you're going to hit some spots where it ain't going to be smooth for you. Now, how do you respond to that? How do you keep moving? That's on you. But, you know, your job is to keep growing and to keep getting better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Thomas. Thank you for coming. My name is Sahil. You said that we don't always give love to those from New Jersey, New York, but someone who we do love a lot has been Shaquille O'Neal. So I have to ask what your experience has been with him over the years.
I love him. That is my dude. I mean, if I could be any basketball player in the world ever at any point in time, I would want to be Shaq, right? Because everything that you want a person, a professional athlete, a friend to be, Shaq is that to me. That's my dude.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Thomas. I'm Ethan. I'm a freshman here, and I was wondering which player in the NBA today reminds you the most of yourself from your playing days?
Ooh. You know, that little Kyrie Irving, I just like his style. You know, and he freaky with that ball, you know? It's like, so I would hope that my game was similar to his. I would hope, because his game is on point.
Thank you.
Hi again. I wanted to ask what it was like playing against Hakeem Olajuwon and about Nikola Jokic and how he's changing the game right now.
So I'll answer the second question first about Jokic. I think what Jokic has done is reminded everyone of how great centers used to be, right? He's reminded everyone that, you know, big men can and still dominate the game when they want to. So Jokic, to me, is a throwback to that era of when big men dominated. And when you talk about Hakeem Olajuwon, you know, we called him two people. You know, whenever I played against him, I said, we're playing against Hakeem and Olajuwon. That's how good he was.
All right, thank you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Marjorie. I graduated from Seton Hall, let's just say over 15 years ago. And I would like to know, Mr. Thomas, does your company, Isiah International, support pitches? Do you take new business offers or opportunities?
So what Isiah International is, we specialize in startups and turnarounds. So new businesses is kind of what we take on and kind of what we do. And you know, we like to say we're vast with multitudes, but we're not successful in every business, but you know, we do look at new businesses. Yes.
Okay. How does one get in contact with you? Do you have availability? Do you have a business card? The reason why I'm asking is because I remember when I graduated from Seton Hall, we had someone who came to speak, and it was at that opportunity, I was a business student, that I actually spoke with someone who helped me to form like a technology company, and now my business partners and I, we have like what we think is an amazing idea. So we
Yeah.
wanted to see if we could pitch it to you.
Yeah. So you can go to the website,
Okay.
Isiah International, or you can go to Sherlon.com, and you can DM us on Instagram. And
Nice. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your time. Great talk. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Jaime. I wanted to ask you about how do you manage egos? Because recently I was reading a story about Real Madrid, and back in the 2000s, they had the Galacticos, a great team. And when in one of the negotiations with the players, the guy just said, "I just want to win €1 more than the other ones," just like an ego competition.
Yeah.
And you are the Knicks as a manager, such a great institution. How do you manage that?
You manage it with truth and facts, right? And if there was a story about, a while ago about these two players, and they were giants in our NBA game. One was named Bill Russell, and the other one was named Wilt Chamberlain. And Wilt Chamberlain was the highest paid player in the NBA. And Bill Russell said, "I just want $1 more than Wilt Chamberlain." And Red Auerbach, being the astute businessman and general manager that he was, decided that he would give Bill Russell that $1 more and satisfied his ego, and they won 11 out of 13 championships.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. I'm a senior. My name is Jalen Russell. My question for you was, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, and with a man as a portfolio so deep as yourself, I was wondering, how do you manage your time?
That's a good question. I try to manage it like, there's this thing that they talk about, you got to have balance. If you're trying to make it and you're trying to get it, ain't no balance, right? So how do I manage my time? When I fall asleep, I fall asleep. But when I'm awake, I'm grinding. I'm trying to get it. So I don't have balance, right? So you just if you're running a business and you got a company, there's really no such thing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Now, some people will tell you, "Oh, that's unhealthy," and Isiah gave you some unhealthy advice. I just did, but I just want you to know that I gave you some unhealthy advice, but I think business-wise it may pay off for you.
Thank you so much.
That's it for the students. I'm Len DeLuca, and I work for that man, the great Charlie Grantham. And I just want to say a couple of things. One, I was at CBS Sports, and thank you for being on our last two champions on the NBA on CBS. To the earlier point, could he be an all-star? In the argument of best point guard ever, I'm trying to think who competes with you. Maybe Bob Cousy, who's older than, God bless him, he's still alive in 90-something in Florida, and not very many others. So if you consider Magic a point guard, fine, but you're there. And what I would ask you is, today, Writers Guild, AFTRA, UAW are all on strike as we sit here. For the two of you, including that man who wrote in 1990 in the New York Times, "Is it time to pay the college athletes," when we made that $1 billion deal for the basketball tournament at CBS in 1989. Is there a resurgence in unions, and how and why?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take it first. Well, first of all, I was serious earlier when I said that the goals and objectives of employees today should be to make a greater share of the revenue that's being generated in these businesses. And back in the 80s, when we talked about a guaranteed percentage of all revenue as a minimum, was not only revolutionary at the time, but even today, because I believe that all three of these unions, first of all, we're in a very labor-friendly administration. So President Biden is supporting unions. I just think now we've got to take that step forward and be legitimately good business people, which says, I can't chase all of these different sources, but we'll define them with you because you're always out there looking for them. We'll define them, and we want a guaranteed percentage of that. Is that 53? Is it 55? Is it 60? You know, one of the things I talk about in class all the time, is that when you look at college sports, room, board, books, tuition, and cost of attendance is what is compensated for the Power 5 conferences and all the big money makers. That equals about 12% of all revenue at the collegiate level. 12%. So when you talk about balance and we talk about wages, hours, and working conditions, you point out I wrote that in 1990. This is 2023.
Just 33 years.
Pardon?
Just 33 years.
And we're still talking about what's fair and equitable.
I would say, yeah. I think the balance of corporations now, and also the pressure that corporations and their senior management feel to be profitable every year. So every year you have to have a 4% growth or 6% growth or 10% growth. Well, where does that come from? That comes from the people who are helping you. They're the ones who are getting squeezed. So I think there needs to be a realignment and adjustment of perspective in terms of what we deem or call success. What Charlie is referencing and talking about in terms of revenue sharing, where everybody eats, everybody succeeds, that's more of the way I think things should be. But then you get into, some group will say, well, that's a socialist, that's communism, but you can have it in such a way where you can say, if I reach this number, if my company reaches, what's the championship? Is it a $2 billion company? Is it a $5 billion company? Is it a $1 trillion company? Once I reach that level, right, then I shouldn't be able to go any further, right? I'm deemed a champion in my business. Now, if I fall below that $1 trillion number or that $1 billion number or whatever it is, now I get to work my way back up, and now we get to, as a team, as employees and managers. But I think there needs to be a reset in terms of corporate pressure, having to hit 5% growth, 10% growth, 20% growth every year. Because when you do that, you're going to squeeze the little guy.
Thank you. I hope the students are half as excited about listening to you as I've been, and you've gone 35 minutes over. We're in overtime.
Oh,
thank you very much.
I got to go.
Thank you all for coming. Please give our guests a hand, and we'll see you in class.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I got